When my daughter-in-law told everyone I was dead, I decided to let her believe it.
When my daughter-in-law told everyone I was dead, I decided to let her believe it. If you like these stories, please subscribe to Soulbyte. It helps us share more. I had lived in the same house for 37 years. My husband died there in 2019, and after that, the rooms felt bigger and emptier at the same time. I learned to cook for one, which meant a lot of leftovers and quiet dinners at the kitchen table. The television became my companion most evenings. I watched game shows and old movies, the kind with clear beginnings and endings. My son Michael visited twice a month, usually on Sundays with his wife Diane. They had been married for 6 years by then, and I had tried my best to welcome her. She was polite in that careful way some people are when they are measuring everything you say. At first, I thought she was just shy. I made her favorite foods when they visited. I asked about her work at the dental office. I complimented her clothes and her hair. We never had arguments, we never raised our voices, but I felt the distance grow each time they visited. Diane would sit on the edge of the couch, phone in hand, and nod when I spoke. Michael would watch football or help me fix something in the kitchen, but the conversations grew shorter. I told myself it was natural. Young people are busy. They have their own lives. I did not want to be the kind of mother who demanded constant attention. I lived on a fixed income, but the house was paid off, and I had a small savings account my husband had set aside. It was not a fortune, maybe $60,000, but it was enough to give me peace of mind. Michael knew about it. We had talked about wills and estates a few years back, right after his father passed, and I had shown him the papers. Everything would go to him when I passed. He said I should not worry about that for a long time. He hugged me and told me to take care of myself. I believed him. In early spring, I started having chest pains. Nothing dramatic, just a tightness that came and went. It scared me enough to make an appointment. I went to the clinic and they ran some tests. The doctor said my heart was fine, but I should watch my stress levels and maybe cut back on salt. I felt relieved. I called Michael that evening to tell him. He sounded distracted. There was noise in the background like a television or people talking. He said he would come by that weekend to check on me. He did not. 2 weeks later, I called him again. Diane answered. She said Michael was out. I asked when he would be back. She said she did not know. Her voice was flat, like she was reading from a script. I left a message asking him to call me. He did not call back. I tried 3 more times over the next month. The phone rang and rang. Once, Diane picked up and said, "He's not available right now," and hung up before I could respond. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe they were going through something. Maybe I had said something that upset them and did not realize it. I went over our last conversation in my mind, looking for clues. Then my neighbor Karen knocked on my door one morning in late April. She had a strange look on her face, like she was about to deliver bad news but was not sure how. She was holding a casserole dish, which confused me because I was not sick. She asked if I was okay. I said yes, why would I not be? She hesitated, shifting the dish in her hands, then said she had run into Diane at the grocery store the day before. Diane had told her that I had passed away 2 weeks ago. Quietly in my sleep. She said the family was keeping it private and did not want a big funeral. I stood there in my doorway, staring at her. The morning air was cool, and I remember hearing birds in the tree above us. Karen reached out and touched my arm, as if checking that I was real. She said she was so sorry for bothering me, but she had wanted to see for herself. She said she had been worried. I told her I was fine. I told her there had been some kind of mistake. She nodded slowly, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. She handed me the casserole and left, and I closed the door and sat down in the hallway. My hands were shaking. I called Michael again. This time he answered on the third ring. I said, "Michael, I just heard something very strange." There was a pause. I could hear him breathing. Then he said, "Mom, I can't talk right now." I said, "Diane told people I'm dead." Another pause, longer this time. He said, "That's not what happened. There was a misunderstanding." I said, "What kind of misunderstanding makes someone think I'm dead?" He said he had to go and hung up. I sat there for a long time. The house was silent except for the ticking of the clock in the kitchen. I felt something shift inside me. This was not a misunderstanding. This was something else, something deliberate. Over the next few days, I started noticing things. The mail carrier looked at me strangely when I came to the door. He stammered and asked how I was doing, and I said fine. The woman at the pharmacy asked if I was feeling better, and when I said I had been fine, she blinked and said she must have been thinking of someone else. A cousin I had not spoken to in years sent me a sympathy card addressed to Michael. It arrived at my house by mistake, probably because she had my old address. I opened it. Inside, she had written, "So sorry for your loss. Your mother was a kind woman." I stared at the words. My own cousin believed I was gone. I wondered how many other people had been told. I wondered how far this lie had spread. I called Michael's number again. It went straight to voicemail. I tried 5 more times over the next week. Nothing. I drove to their house one afternoon. It was a 20-minute drive and my hands were tight on the wheel the whole way. Their neighborhood was newer than mine, with large houses and perfect lawns. When I got there, Diane's car was in the driveway. I knocked on the door. She opened it and froze. She looked at me like I was a ghost. Her face went white. I said, "We need to talk." She stepped back and said Michael was not home. I said I was not there for Michael. I was there for her. I needed to understand why she was telling people I was dead. She swallowed and said this was not a good time. I said, "You told people I'm dead, Diane. When is a good time to talk about that?" She did not answer. She just stood there, her hand on the door, and then she said, "You should go." She closed the door in my face. I stood on that porch for a minute, breathing hard. I felt anger rise in my chest, hot and sharp, but I forced it down. Anger would not help me. I needed to think clearly. I got back in my car and drove home. That night, I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out all my documents: bank statements, property deed, will, insurance policies, social security paperwork. I spread them out on the kitchen table and started reading through everything. I needed to understand what was happening and why. I found it in the life insurance policy. My husband had taken it out years ago, and I was the beneficiary when he passed. But after he died, Michael had helped me update some of my own paperwork. He said I should have a small policy on myself, just enough to cover funeral costs so he would not have to worry about expenses. I had agreed. It seemed practical. The policy was for $50,000. Michael was listed as the beneficiary. The policy was still active. I had been paying the monthly premium automatically from my checking account. I had forgotten about it. I sat back in my chair. The pieces started falling into place. If I was dead, Michael could collect $50,000. If I was dead, the house would go into probate and he could sell it. The market was good. The house was worth at least $300,000. If I was dead, my savings account would transfer to him. That was another $60,000, $400,000. That was what I was worth to them. I felt sick, but I also felt something else, a cold, clear focus. I was not going to let this happen. I spent the next 2 weeks gathering evidence. I went to the bank and requested copies of all my account activity for the past year. I asked them to put a note on my account that I was alive and to call me personally if anyone tried to access it. The manager looked concerned and wrote everything down. I called my insurance company and confirmed that no claim had been filed yet, but I asked them to flag my account. The representative said she would make a note and send me a confirmation letter. I wrote down every conversation I had with neighbors and friends who had been told I was dead. I kept a log with dates, names, and exactly what they said Diane had told them. Karen gave me the name of another neighbor who had also heard the news. I called her. She confirmed the story. She said Diane had seemed very sad when she told her. I also called a lawyer. I found one who specialized in elder law and fraud. I explained the situation calmly, and he listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said it sounded like attempted fraud, but I would need proof that Diane or Michael had acted with clear intent. He suggested I document everything and consider filing a police report if they attempted to access my accounts or file an insurance claim. I thanked him and said I would think about it. He did not charge me for the consultation. Then I heard about the dinner party. Karen mentioned it in passing when I ran into her at the post office. She said Diane had invited a few neighbors over for a small gathering. She looked uncomfortable bringing it up. She said it was supposed to be this Saturday evening. She said Diane had mentioned it was a celebration of life for me. Karen looked embarrassed when she said it. I told her it was fine. I told her not to worry. I asked her who else was invited. She gave me 3 more names. I went home and made a plan. I called the police non-emergency line and explained the situation. The officer who answered sounded skeptical at first, but I gave him names and dates. I told him about the insurance policy and the spreading rumors. He said he would send someone by to verify that I was alive and document the situation. 2 officers came to my house that afternoon. They were professional and thorough. They took my statement, checked my identification, and wrote everything down. One of them, a younger officer with kind eyes, said, "This is a new one." He gave me a case number and said I could use it if I needed to pursue legal action. I thanked them. Then I asked if they could accompany me to an event on Saturday evening. I explained what I wanted to do. The younger officer smiled. He said he would check with his supervisor, but it sounded reasonable. He called me back an hour later and said they would meet me there. Saturday came. I put on a navy dress and my good shoes. I did my hair and put on lipstick. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked the same as I always had. Alive, present, real. I drove to Michael and Diane's house at 7 o'clock. The police car followed at a distance, parking down the street as we had planned. When I pulled up, I could see people through the front window. There were maybe 10 or 12 guests inside, holding drinks and talking. I could see Diane moving through the room with a tray. I could see Michael standing near the fireplace. I walked up to the door and knocked. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. Diane answered. The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I said, "Hello, Diane, I heard there was a party." I stepped past her into the house. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me. I recognized a few neighbors, a couple of Michael's coworkers, and Diane's sister. Michael was standing near the fireplace, holding a glass of wine. He stared at me, his face pale. The glass tilted in his hand and wine spilled onto the carpet. I said, "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to let everyone know that I'm not dead." I kept my voice calm and even. There seems to have been some confusion. One of the neighbors, an older man named Tom, laughed nervously. He said, "Well, this is awkward." Someone else whispered something. Diane stood frozen by the door. Her sister put down her glass. Michael took a step forward. He said, "Mom, what are you doing here?" I looked at him. I said, "I'm here because my daughter-in-law told everyone I had passed away 2 weeks ago. I'm here because you stopped returning my calls. I'm here because this is fraud, Michael, and it stops now." Diane's sister spoke up. She said, "This is a misunderstanding. Diane was just I cut her off. I said, I have documented everything. I have statements from neighbors. I have bank records showing I'm alive and well. I have spoken to the police, and they are outside right now if anyone would like to verify my identity. The room was completely silent. Michael looked at Diane. She looked down at the floor. One of the neighbors, a woman I recognized from the grocery store, quietly set down her glass and moved toward the door. She mumbled something about needing to leave. Others followed. Within 2 minutes, the room had emptied except for Michael, Diane, and me. I said, I don't know what you were planning, but it ends here. I am alive. My accounts are flagged. The insurance company has been notified. If you attempt to file any claims or access anything in my name, I will press charges. Do you understand? Michael opened his mouth, then closed it. Diane's hands were shaking. She said, we didn't mean. I held up my hand. I said, I don't want to hear it. I am your mother-in-law, not your bank account. I am a person, not a payday. I turned and walked out. The police officers were waiting by their car. I thanked them for coming. They asked if I needed anything else. I said no. I got into my own car and drove home with my hands steady on the wheel. The next week, I changed my will. I set up a trust that would donate my estate to a local charity that helps seniors after I passed. I updated all my beneficiaries on every account. I put everything in writing and had it notarized. I made copies and stored them in 3 different places. Michael called once. I let it go to voicemail. He said he was sorry. He said Diane had been under a lot of stress and had made a mistake. He said he hoped we could work things out. I did not call him back. I sent him a letter instead. I told him that I forgave him, but I could not trust him anymore. I told him that my estate was no longer his concern. I told him that if he wanted to be in my life, it would have to be on honest terms, and that would take time. Probably more time than I had left. I have not heard from him since. I still live in the same house. I still see Karen at the post office, and we talk about normal things now. The story made its way around the neighborhood, and most people have been kind about it. A few have asked me how I'm doing, and I tell them I'm fine, because I am. This was not the ending I imagined for my family, but it taught me something important. You can love someone and still protect yourself. You can forgive someone and still set boundaries. And when people show you who they are, you should believe them. If you enjoyed this emotional story, please like, comment, and subscribe to Soulbyte. Your support helps us keep sharing these family dramas.